people can see you. So don't take a camper off into a private room and shut the door because you're going to have a sensitive conversation. It is okay to have a sensitive conversation with a camper as long as you are in a place where people can see you. So just go off a distance where you know that you're in sight line of a lot of people, but they can't overhear what you're talking about, okay? So just be careful about what you are doing one-on-one with campers, and just know we just need to be able to see you. We don't need to be able to hear you, but we do need to be able to see where you are. That is my safety spiel there, but yeah, let's just be careful, I guess, with ourselves and with our campers. All right, I want to go over camp a little bit. For those of you who haven't been as involved in camp before, which I'm looking around, not many of you at all, but the Emeralds are campers who are entering grades 4 and 5 in the fall. The Sapphires are entering grades 2 to 3 in the fall, and Rubies are campers who are entering grades K through 1, and they travel in groups like that. So the Rubies all travel together, the Sapphires all travel together, and the Emeralds all travel together. The Diamonds are kids that are younger than kindergarten, and they meet in the nursery for a morning of fun while their mom or dads staff the camp. I think we have 8 Diamonds coming this year, which is a good number. So 8 Diamonds are coming. And I just want to go through this daily schedule to make sure that we all know what we're doing. So first of all, I already talked about the parking. Park around the outskirts of the parking lot, and I have a guy who I'm going to send in here if you don't do that into the morning rally and ask you to move your car. And he can be mean. He's not. It's my dad. He's not mean. But he will come and get you to move your car. We will have the staff meeting at 8 o'clock. We will be done by 8:30. The worship team will practice and warm up at 8:30. And that's when campers will start coming into the sanctuary. I already talked about the morning meeting. We will be reciting verses just like we always do. So I will be asking during the morning meeting certain junior counselors to sit outside, take their turn, sitting in the chairs to listen to campers recite their Bible verses as they come on in. Barb's going to talk more about the verses later when the second session, but we are still doing the memory work, just sort of in a different way than we've done it before. But Barb's in charge of that, so she's going to talk about that a little bit more later. The kids will then all come into the sanctuary where you will meet them in their pews if you are a counselor or a junior counselor. And at that point, after the 8:30 meeting, crafts is going to go out to the craft tents and set up, and games is going to go out to the games and set up for games. And the counselors will be here in the sanctuary to meet their kids. After opening rally, we sing some very loud songs, and there is usually a fun skit. Amy's been in charge of that this year, and it is so cute. It's based on The Wizard of Oz, but I believe that Nyla wrote that years ago, and Amy has just sort of updated it and made it super cute with the kids who are doing it. But so it's The Wizard of Oz this year, or ish. It's kind of a take on The Wizard of Oz, right? Anyway, she's done a great job with that, as have the kids. So that's usually what happens in the opening rally. Bethany is going to be emceeing or running the opening rally. Bethany, she's down with the junior counselors right now, but she'll be doing that in the morning while I'm out in the parking lot greeting families and getting them on their way. Then the Rubies and the Emeralds and the Sapphires cycle through 3 stations with a snack break in the middle there. They go to games, crafts, and a Bible lesson. And it's always the same order. If you start in crafts, then you go to games. If you go to games, after games, you go to Bible. After Bible, you go to crafts. And it's always in that order. Now, since we go through that same order, everyone goes through the same exact order, we have a certain flow that we want to follow throughout our schedule. The flow is important because our building is small, our hallways are a bit small, and we have a lot of bodies. Right now, my count is we will have 420 bodies on campus each day. Now, not everybody shows up, so it might be more around 400, but that's a lot of people trying to move through these different stations. So let me tell you how we do it, and I am very picky about this flow because I think it works. Anyway, so what I would like you to think about is kind of flowing through these stations as best as you can. When you are at crafts, you will go to games. Now, we do some days up here on the flat area by the parking lot, and then we do some days on the hill. You will know where you're supposed to go. So if you're in crafts, the waters can part. And it is crafts that goes to games, right? I'm saying this right? No, I'm saying that wrong, aren't I? No. Yeah. I'm doing this right. Okay, let me start in games because I do know it from games. I don't know what's wrong with me. Okay, so you start in games. You need to take your kids, even if you're on the flat area up here, you need to take them all around the building and enter the basement door that is below this door. It leads into the children's wing of the church building. So do you know where the children's classrooms are? Check out the door at the end of the hallway on Sunday, just so you know where it is. But when you enter it from the outside, you walk past the kitchen windows, past the Sunday school window, and in that basement door. The reason that we have the games come in that way is because usually you're wet or you're messy. Something where we want you to walk a ways to shake all the water off of you and shake all the dirt off of you. So there's rugs on the hallway down there that are put there for camp so that you're not slipping and sliding on the floor. But you walk your kids in that way, down the hallway that's already decorated, like under the sea with an octopus and nets, and it's super cute. Anyway, so they'll walk down that decorated hallway, and they'll walk towards the bathrooms. At that point, from your way from games to Bible, you might ask someone if they need to go to the bathroom. This is not a time for your whole cabin to go to the bathroom. This is maybe people that you know have left Bible before because they had to go to the bathroom. So just remind them, we're all going to go up in the sanctuary, but I'm going to stay here with you so that you go to the bathroom. Okay, so use those bathrooms. Don't let all your girls go in there and primp in the mirrors. You don't have time for that. You just walked some distance, and we are starting Bible on time. So get upstairs to Bible, but use the bathrooms if you have to on the way up. So you come into Bible, you're coming up the stairs and into the sanctuary doors. By that time, the people in Bible should already be gone, but I'm going to talk about that next. When you come into Bible, you are going to have assigned seats. We aren't going to have boys and girls split. The walls are not going to be closed. It's going to look like this, but without all the chairs in the back. So big open space. And when you come into Bible, you're going to be seated in these two sections. And I will tell you where you're going to sit so that you know where to take your cabin. It'll be the same place every day that you come to Bible. We'll have Bible. I'll be standing on the floor. There will be people acting things out behind me. Hopefully that'll be a bit more engaging. Actually, I'm going out of order. I skipped the verse part, but we'll talk about that in the second session. But Bible's going to look a little bit differently in that we're all going to be taught. All the rubies are going to be here together. Then they'll leave, then all the sapphires will be here together, then they'll leave, and then emeralds. That's not the right order, but you know what I'm saying. It's emeralds, then sapphires, yes. So then, thank you, Barb. She's going to keep track of me on the details. So then you go from Bible, and we will dismiss you. You'll be in your discussion groups at the time, but we'll dismiss you, and you go out these lobby doors to crafts. I was right about crafts going to games. Okay, so you go out the lobby doors to crafts. But this flow in the lobby is such that because people are coming up from games and people are leaving from Bible, we have to have that flow right. So hopefully the crafts people will be out as the Bible people are coming in, but we will direct you around that island in the middle of the lobby so that you won't run into each other and it won't become like crazy. So then from crafts, you go to games. That's not as big of a flow issue because you'll know where to be. So that is, and snack is on the back lawn. That happens between sessions 2 and 3, and you just head to the back lawn. That is the time to use the bathrooms. Okay, we don't necessarily want kids using the bathrooms on the way to Bible. That's not a great time to do it, but snack time is. But again, when you send your campers into the bathroom, when you come into the bathroom, come in through the basement door. We don't want anyone coming in through the fellowship hall because we're trying to keep that place clean and out of use. We also do not want kids coming in the doors in the fellowship hall, walking down the hallway by the kitchen and by my office. We're not using that area for kids. The junior counselors will be down there for their training, but the campers should not be. The campers should just be entering this door here at the basement. So remind your junior counselors, go in the basement door and flow in through that way to go to the bathroom. Snack is a great time to use the bathroom. All right, you can see the special dress days and events there. Don't worry, you will hear about them during the week. But just take note of that parent night. Thursday night, it starts at 7. If you could all plan to be there so that you can meet your campers' parents and just participate in what I think this year is going to look a little bit different than it has in the past. I'm hoping that it'll be a bit, it'll be meaningful just because we are owning the Bible curriculum, so we can talk a little bit more about that. All right, dismissal. Like I said, last year, Monday was a disaster, but by the end of the week, it was all fixed. So children are going to be dismissed from the sanctuary. So after the closing rally is over, they're going to be very excited, but we're going to ask them to sit down and watch some videos that are going to be up on the screen. And they're silly things, like I've just made a playlist of all these videos that we can play through. I think like one is Dude Perfect trick shots, and another one is building sandcastles. One of my favorite is This Cake or Not? Kind of clips from that TV show. All very friendly videos that hopefully will keep the kids' attention a little bit so that they are quiet enough to hear their names called from the back of the sanctuary. Jennifer White is going to be calling the names from a microphone at the back of the sanctuary. Bethany is going to be walking around the sanctuary just in case anyone is like way too hyper and you guys need some help. But Jennifer will call the names. The parents will come. We line the cars up in lines, kind of first come, first serve lines. And then we send the parents into the lobby one line at a time. So the first line will go, they'll come in, call their names, get their kids, go back to their car. And then we have the timing down so that we let the second line go so that they're in line to get their kids, go back to their cars. As soon as the first line is there, we're sending them out of the parking lot. And then as soon as the second line is there, sending them out of the parking lot. So in here, we just need the kids to be able to hear their names so they go to their parents right away so that those lines can keep going. And it usually works well. It worked well by Friday because we all sort of knew what we were doing. But as long as you know what's going on out there, here in the sanctuary, your role is really just to keep your kids quiet enough, listen for their names, and send them out as soon as you hear them. Send them out of the sanctuary, okay? And then we can kind of take care of the rest outside. All right, I'm gonna let you read the discipline notes on your own, but basically what I want you to know and take from that is hopefully you won't have to do much of this. Hopefully, if there is a kid in your cabin that is very excited to be here, maybe can't quite control their impulses or whatever it looks like. You can imagine what, I don't even know what to call it. Let's just call it poor behavior, poor choices. If a kid is making poor choices, there are different ways to respond to that positively. You respond to it, instead of saying, stop doing that, you say, oh, why don't you come draw on this piece of paper? So don't say stop throwing something at your friend. Say, oh, look, I have this piece of paper over here. Could you come color on it? Kind of distract them with something positive. Doesn't always work. I'm not saying that, but it's a great place to start. And remain calm. If you're upset, they get even more upset. And that's hard, but hopefully you'll be able to remain calm and nothing will be that bad. Don't address a child's behavior. If you have to talk to them about something, don't do it in front of the whole group. Do it privately with the child so that it's just between you and the kid instead of you and everyone else as well. And then oftentimes just going and sitting or standing beside the child does a whole lot of good. And if those things don't work, please talk to me and I can help you. We don't want anything to get so far out of control that we can't reel it back in without managing the issue here on campus ourselves. There's a list of the crafts. Craft people, you are going to go downstairs and learn all about those crafts, but if you'd like to get an idea of what they're going to be doing, there will be samples on your table when you show up that they're going to make. All right, let me make sure that I said everything that I wanted to say, And I did. So, right now, we are going to take about a 10-minute break. Juliet, do you mind going and telling Bethany that we're done up here so she can let her kids go? Thank you. We're going to take about a 10-minute break. If you are assigned to crafts, it's on your folder. Emily Goller is in charge of crafts this year. She's done a fantastic job. You can go down and join her in room 5, where she's going to teach you about the crafts and what they are going to look like. If you are in games, Jake is going to meet you. He said,
I'm behind that tree.
Yeah, there you are.
We'll go to the pastor's office.
Yes, follow Jake to the pastor's office. When you are done with games or crafts and you're dismissed, you are free to leave. If you are in registration, let's see, yes, registration, and Sarah is here. Anyone else? Yes, if you guys could connect, and then once you connect and feel like you know what you're doing, you're free to, well, you got to wait for him. So then you can stay and listen to the Bible summary too. And then what did I miss? Oh, kitchen. So the kitchen stuff right now is in 2 different places. I'm telling Janice because she's looking at me. And is anyone else here? Yes, you two are, yeah, you guys. So if you will join Jan, your stuff is in room 4, and there is some stuff in the kitchen that has been brought out of the sheds. So if you want to look through all of that stuff, see if you're missing anything, what else I can get for you. Some of the snack stuff hasn't arrived yet, like the stuff I told you I was ordering. So that might not have arrived yet, but all the other snacks are there, and the lemonade and pitchers and bags and stuff. So if you want to go start looking through that, it's in room 4. Yeah, room 4, and some in the kitchen. Okay? Did I miss anybody? Diamonds. Yeah. You're the one here tonight? No. Anybody else? Thought I saw. Anyway, I'll talk to you. Okay? All right. So, 10-minute break. I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Use the bathroom. Get something to drink. I should have thought about snacks before this. But I just did now. Yeah. Hey, All right, I would like all of you to sort of try to find your counselors and junior counselors, if that's okay. So, what I'm going to do to help you with this is I would like anyone who is working with rubies to come to this section and sort of, I don't know, play it like the game, like E8 or R8, R8. Is anyone here for R8? Try to see if you can figure it out. If you are with sapphires, go to this section of the pews, do the same thing. Sapphires, sapphires, sapphires. Or if you are in emeralds, go over to that side over there and do the same thing. And if you are in games, at this point I think it would just be junior counselors. If you are in games, follow Jake down to the pastor's office. Sapphires are right here. What? Oh, you are one above him. 9. You're S9. Yeah.
All right, games. Kellen. Just you? Slacking off.
Okay, I think we found each other all right. So let's do this. I would like you to pray together as a group. So rubies, come on over here. Maybe split up into boy rubies and girl rubies, because I don't think everyone's senior counselors here. But come on over here and split up. And I want you to sit and pray together for your cabins. I know you don't always know their names. Well, the senior counselor should. You might not know their names, but pray for the kids who are coming in your cabins and pray for the week of camp together. Sapphires, same thing. Sort of gather up. If you met your other counselor, stick with them. If not, sort of split up into smaller groups. You could do boys and girls. You can do it however you would like to. And emeralds, same thing. If you found your, how about you guys just all make one small group? There's not that many emeralds here. Right? There's no emerald girls at all. Oh, no, Elizabeth's here. Here I am. Right here. So you guys, why don't you come in here with these guys? Sort of, I know, we've got 2 names. 2 names. Boys can go to that. Why don't you come here with Elizabeth and Priya? What cabin are you in? 3. On 4? All right, I'm just going to close us in prayer. Lord Jesus, I thank you so much for these volunteers who are here tonight. And this group is really the group that I believe will be forming the relationships with these kids that will show them who you are and how much you love them. I pray, Lord, that you will give them wisdom to learn about their kids, wisdom to learn what their kids need and how much they need you. And I pray that you will also give them grace and patience with each other as they work together to lead these groups. In your name I pray, amen. All right, I'm going to move you again. I'm going to move you around a bit tonight because I don't want anyone falling asleep on me. So I would love it if you would all come sit in these two sections of pews. Junior counselors, you're going to need to be somewhere near someone with a folder. You don't have folders, but I am going to be referring to them. So if you can at least be looking over someone's shoulder to see a folder, that would be great. But let's all gather in these two sections of pews. The senior counselors all have folders. So try to sit near someone who looks like a senior counselor. All right, I wanted to talk to this group specifically about Bible. Bible is going to look different this year than it has in previous years. Myself and the church and other leadership at our church really felt that God was leading us to take Bible into our own hands. In previous years, we have asked an outside organization to come in and teach the Bible time, and they did a great job. So we're not leaving CEF because we didn't like them or like what they were doing. We are doing Bible on our own because we feel that God has asked us to do that. We run this great camp because we want children to know who Jesus is, and we want to be the ones who are teaching them who Jesus is. We wanted ownership of that as a church. And I am happy about that. There are a few things in life that I really love, and watching children come to know the Lord and learn more about him is one of those things that I love. So having a little bit of a say in how that's taught just does make my heart a little bit happy. So I'm happy that we're doing this. And I want to talk to you about how it's practically going to look different, and then what the Bible curriculum is actually going to be, so that you know what you're expected to know when you come into camp next week. But before we do that, I want to give you a little bit of background into where I was coming from when I wrote this curriculum. I'm going to put a quote up here by one of my favorite children's ministry authors that I have read a lot of. And this is what I think about with children's ministry, but it was really what I was thinking about when I was writing this curriculum. Can you go to slide 7? Is that? No, that's it. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read you this quote. I have one clear hope in all of this. My answer to the question, which gods do I trust and what are they like? I trust Jesus, who really loves my children and me and this world. I really do. I trust Jesus, who comes right up close to us, Jesus who suffered and died, Jesus who lives, and so however complicated and painful things are, however reasonable despair might seem, we are indeed loved and not alone. This is what I want these kids to know. I want them to know that no matter how painful life gets, no matter how much they struggle, they are not alone, they are loved. I want them to know Jesus, Jesus who loves us, Jesus who is close to us, Jesus who died for us and lives We are loved and we are not alone. And I want them to know Jesus, who wants a relationship with them, or as kids would understand it, and as I show you how I would share the gospel with a kid, I call it a friendship. Jesus who wants to be friends with these kids. And I put a picture of these little cuties up here because these 3 girls who were at camp last year mean a lot to me. One of them is my niece, Willa. She's the smallest. She's adorable, and I love her. The one in the pink and the white and orange striped little outfit is my daughter, Charlie. And, of course, I love her very much. And then Winnie is in that picture, too. She was their junior counselor last year. And so she is another girl in this church who I've known since she was a tiny little munchkin when her parents first came to church here. And I care deeply about her and her spiritual growth as well. So when I was writing this curriculum, I was thinking about these kids that I love, that I knew were going to be at camp, that are in Roots and Shoots every week, and then all of the other kids who come to camp and love it every year. I was thinking about them and their hearts and how we could best teach them about Jesus who loves them. But so much of this, how this Bible curriculum will look, is based on this hope of mine and how I think we can best accomplish that at camp. I want the Bible lessons to feel very relational. I want the counselors to have meaningful relationships with the kids in their cabins. Now, I say that word cabin, and I will tell you the truth. I was telling Willa the other day who was going to be in her cabin. It's one of her very best friends in the whole wide world, and I was like, she's going to be in your cabin. Willa was so excited. And then she said to me, Aunt Joni, what are the cabins at your church? And I thought, she thinks it's a physical building. It's not a physical building. I come from a heavy camp background where we call groups cabins, so I use that word kind of interchangeably. So when you hear me say cabin, I'm also talking about your groups. But I'm going to use those words interchangeably, but hopefully I won't confuse all of the kindergartners who are coming to camp. But so I can't have those personal relationships with the 270 kids that are signed up to come to camp right now. It's just physically impossible. I can't do it. But you can. You can have a very close relationship in 1 week with the 8 to 11 kids that are in your cabins. And so I need you to take on the challenge of forming those relationships with the kids that will help them see how this Bible that they're learning about, this Jesus who they're learning about, is relational and how he wants a relationship with them. I want the gospel to feel personal to these kids. I don't want it to feel like a fear-based box they need to check or something that like, okay, if I'm a good person, I do this and then I'm done. But I want them to see a relationship with God as something that is lifelong, something that, or a relationship with a God who loves them deeply. But that's a big ask of you counselors. I know, it's a big ask to ask you to look at your role in a different way. You're not going to look at your role as a babysitter. You're not going to look at your role as someone who's running around after campers as they're doing their crafts and their games and up and down the hill and up and down and through the basement door. And, you know, that's one way to look at it. But if you look at it from a relational level, that you are forming relationships with these kids so that you can better share the gospel with them, it's a big ask, but I know that you can do it. So we talked about this earlier, the stages of spiritual growth up here with the senior counselors, but I wanted to put it up here again on the screen so that everyone could see them. Let's go through these again, just because this is really my heart about where kids are on this spectrum, right? I want a child. I'm going to read them to you. I'm going to take this so that the YouTube connection can still hear me. I want a child who has never heard that Jesus loves him to hear and know that Jesus loves him. I want a child who knows that Jesus loves him will learn more of why Jesus can be trusted. I want a child who knows that Jesus can be trusted, will choose to follow him. And I would like a child who has already chosen to follow Jesus to be given ideas of how he now fits into the kingdom of God. I want you to think about those stages of spiritual growth when you look at the kids in your cabin. They're all going to be in a different place. And it's a challenge for you to look at them individually and think, I think that this child is in this place, or I think this child has already trusted Jesus and now needs to know his place in the kingdom of God. Just think about it. You're not going to get it perfect. This isn't a science. You don't know people's hearts. You don't know the hearts of the kids in your cabin, but I do want to challenge you to think about it so that as you are talking in one-on-one conversations with these kids, you will have an idea of what that next step might be, because we do want each kid at camp to take one step closer to God. So I'm going to go back to the camp slide. I don't know if I'm controlling this or if Wes and Chris are, but it worked, so thank you. So the Bible format is going to look different than it has in past years. How many of you have been here? I'm really asking the junior, well, I don't know. How many of you have been here in the past to sit through one of the Bible sessions that CEF has run? Right? Okay. So a long time ago, it looked the same. It did. So typically CEF kind of puts up the walls in the back, and the girls go to one room and the boys go to another room, and they have a Bible memory review, they have a lesson that is taught, they play a review game, and then they all come back together. That's a very broad overview of what happens, but that's the basic format. This is going to look different this year. We're going to leave the walls down. We are going to put all the chairs away because we're going to need them. We're going to need that space. I'll tell you why in a second. And we're going to meet all together. So all of the rubies are going to stay in here in the sanctuary, and I'm going to tell you where to sit as cabins, but we'll sit in these two sections together, okay? After the rubies are done with their Bible time, the emeralds will come in for Bible, and they'll all sit in these assigned cabin spaces, but all the boys and girls together. We're not going to split up. After the Bible lesson is taught, I'm going to teach the Bible, and there's going to be people on stage kind of acting out what I'm doing. Hopefully it'll be exciting and engaging for the kids. Then we are going to break up into, I skipped Barb, but I'm going to come back to you right now. Then we are going to break up into small group discussion groups. We're going to talk about what that's going to look like. But before we do the Bible lesson and all that I was talking about, we're going to start with Bible memory work. So we are going to skip in your notebooks, if you have it, to number 19, teaching the memory verse. Barb Goodwin is going to come up. Barb Goodwin has been helping with verses for years here at Camp Treasure Island, and she is doing it again this year. So she is going to come up and give you some ideas about how to teach the Bible verse in your small groups, and hopefully an idea of how she's going to review it at the beginning of the lesson.
You'll have to tell me if I'm coming through the mic. Oh, good, because I can't tell. Okay, great. Anyway, so you're going to have this discussion time with your group, with your cabin, and I think that's a marvelous opportunity, because as Joni said, you're going to get to know the kids. So if you look at number 19 in your book, it talks about teaching the memory verse, and it's going to be during that discussion time. And I have an acrostic on that page, IPEAR. You don't have to memorize that, but it just gives you an outline of what you want to try to get across. Now, if you forget a part of it and you don't cover it, don't worry about it. Just the important part is to emphasize that this is God's Word. And we try to make learning God's Word fun by giving you points when you come back, the kids' points when they come back the next day. But really, we do it because it honors God and it helps us to live in a way that pleases Him. So if you start up with the introduction, we want to make it interesting. Instead of coming in and saying, today's Bible verse is, you might want to hook it into Joni's lesson or ask them a question. Now, I'll give you a warning. If you ask an open-ended question, you're going to get a lot of open-ended answers, and your discussion time is probably going to be gone. It's better to say, gee, has anybody had a time when they're so thirsty they can't wait to get a drink? Thumbs up or thumbs down. That way you get an answer right away. Okay, so you want to make it interesting, make it a transition from the Bible lesson. And we've already talked about presentation is emphasizing that this is God's word. It's not what I say, it's not what Joni says, it's not what you say in your discussion group. It's what God says, okay? And then you want to explain it a little bit. First of all, there may be words that the children don't know, especially maybe the rubies. And I gave an example. Tuesday's verse says, "Come to me." Well, who is the me? And it's really important to show them what the pronouns are. So, and I like to use motions. I didn't tell the other group this, but you can say, "Come to me," so they know it's talking about God. And then it goes on to say, "All you," so you point to them, "who are weary and burdened." Okay, well, they might not quite understand weary and burdened, so you need to explain those words, okay? And he says, "And I will give you rest." Okay, so rest means he'll give you peace, and you can keep, well, I'm sort of jumping ahead, so we'll get there. But anyway, so the two things you want to make sure you do is to say the verse and to emphasize it's God's word and help explain it. Okay, now then it goes to application. So as you get to know the children, you'll have a sense whether they have never heard about Jesus, or, we hate to say it, have heard only as a curse word, okay, or whether they have heard the gospel many times. So you want to tailor what the verse is about to that. For instance, again on Tuesday, if they already know Jesus, do you know that when you're upset about something, it's like having a burden? And you can stop and talk to God anytime, anywhere, in school, outside on the playground, wherever. So you want to kind of direct it to the kids in your group, and God will give you peace. And then the last idea is you want to do repetition. Now this is not just during the discussion time. Hopefully during crafts or games or snack time, you can ask them to say the verse. Now, obviously, the last group hasn't learned it yet, but you could also help them with that. So you can do something fun, like say, "Okay, Janie, pick a motion," okay? And they can say, "Jump up and down." So have everybody jump up and down saying the verse. So it's not just, just rote repetition. So, and we'll be doing that during especially the closing rally. We will have a game each day. Now, I do want to tell you that some of the games that I'm going to do during the closing rallies, I'm going to need some kids, some campers you've noticed they really paid attention to the verse. I'm going to ask you to look for that during the day, because I want them to be the ones to come up, say the verse, and usually it's pick something out of the bag or something to tell everybody else how to say the verse. So if you could do that for me, it would be a big help. Because usually if you say, "Who wants to say the verse?" every hand goes up, and half of them don't remember it at all, and it's a waste of time. So I'm going to ask you to pay attention to someone in your group that might be able to do that and help me pick that person. So, so that's basically it. We want them to leave camp that day pretty much knowing the verse, so that they can come back the next day and say it and get their points, because they love that part of it.
Thank you, Barb. And the other way that Barb is going to be involved heavily with the verses, and she is also going to be involved in I don't know how to say this. When you are in your one-on-one discussions, and I'm going to talk about this, and questions that you're asking the kids, if you have something that we need to know, if a child doesn't have a Bible at home, if the child has made a significant decision, we'll talk about those type of things. Barb is going to be the one that is going to collect those things from you, because she has follow-up materials that she'd like to give kids who have made significant choices or who need a Bible. We will give out Bibles to kids who don't have them, and we will give out follow-up information to people who need it. But we'll be more specific with that and with what Barb is actually looking for from you. But that would be another one of her roles here at camp, is really leading kind of some of the follow-up with kids. Yes. I will, but Barb is holding up, if you don't mind, can I hold up your folder? So Barb is holding up these pictures, And when we get to start, I'll show these while she's still here. When we get to start talking about the days of the week curriculum, I've given you some tools that you can use, and one of them are these images. So every day the verse has this image. She'll be using this image in the Bible time to review the verse, but you can also use this. This is in your folder, senior counselors, so that you can use this with your campers as you are repeating the verse with them. And it also has the verse written on the back so that you can see that as the campers are saying the verse. But that is what Barb is talking about with the verses. So you have that for every day as just a tool that you can use, a tool in your tool belt that you can use to help the campers learn those verses. All right, so that was the verse. And in the new Bible format, we are going to start Bible right on time. So as you are coming into the sanctuary, we are going to hear the song, Jesus Strong and Kind, being played. This is the song that I've based the curriculum on. Jesus Strong and Kind is a song that has been incredibly meaningful to me over the last few years. And so as I was thinking about writing this Bible curriculum over the past year, I thought, oh, well, that would be nice to incorporate that somehow. But my mom had found a book called Jesus Strong and Kind that was written by Sinclair Ferguson. And it sort of gave me some structure for what the curriculum could look like. I did take a lot of his ideas and turn them into my own, but the ideas did come from him and from his book, so giving full credit to him. But that is where the curriculum is going to come from. And I'm going to go over that curriculum with you in a little bit after we go over the discussion groups. So I'll teach the curriculum or teach the lessons, and then I'm going to break you up into small groups. So the small groups are going to be spread out. And I am going to have places taped on the floor. So we're going to move all the chairs back there. And there will be a small group up here, and I'm going to assign you, like maybe Ruby's 1 goes up to that spot right there. And maybe Ruby's 6 goes up to this spot up here, the pew and the stage. And you circle up and talk as a group there. And then we'll have 4 groups across the back, 1, 2, 3, 4. I will have those taped out in probably squares, or because I'm not going to make a circle, that's too hard with tape. But I'll have the squares taped out with numbers in them so that you know where you're going. So that's 4, 5, 6. There will be a group sitting in the middle of these pews here. That's 7. There will be a group in the prayer room in the back. That'll be group 8, and groups 9 and 10 will be in the conference room. We will have cleared out the tables and have squares on the floor in the conference room. So you will know where you are going. I will give you details about that on Monday morning at our staff meeting once I've taken out all the chairs and can sort of walk the space and see what feels right. But I need to figure that out on Sunday. So I will let you know Monday morning exactly where your group is going to be. But I'll split you up into discussion groups. So my Bible lessons are going to be about 15 minutes long. Barb is probably going to have about 3 minutes to review the verse. We have 30 minutes altogether. My 15 minutes of lesson time does include transition time to your small groups. So you will have between 12 and 15 minutes for your discussion group, depending on how fast you get to your rooms or your spaces and sit down and get started. There's a lot to do in that discussion time. And it doesn't have to just be kept to that one discussion time. You can start there and continue later. And I'll go through actually, I think I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go through what those discussion groups should look like. I would like you in your discussion groups to review the memory verse, like Barb just described. I would like you to go through discussion questions that I've given you, or even ones that you come up with that might be more appropriate for your group. And I would like you to pray with your campers. I don't think you can do all of that in 12 to 15 minutes. So you might need to incorporate the prayer time with your cabins into a different time of day, maybe during snack time, maybe if you arrive at your camp tables or craft tables a little bit early, maybe then. But sneak those times in if you can. But if you have time, then do it in your discussion time. I also want you to incorporate one-on-one time with your campers throughout the week. You're not going to have a one-on-one conversation with everyone every day. I would say make it your goal to have a one-on-one conversation with every camper in your cabin by the end of the week. So one conversation with every camper sometime in those 5 days. I am not naive enough to think that that will actually happen, but I want you to make it a goal in your head so that you're at least trying to connect with these campers individually. And let's see, where did I put that? I'm not sure where I put that one-on-one time. Oh, I think I'm missing a page here. Anyway, but so look for that one-on-one time. I want to talk about discussion groups. I'm not sure how many of you have led discussion groups before, and I was even thinking through some of this stuff that to me feels very like, oh yeah, of course that's what you do. But it's because I was trained as a teacher and I taught for a lot of years. So some of this stuff feels natural to me where I actually had to learn how to do it, and I sort of forget that part of my life, the learning how. So I was trying to go back and remember, okay, what is it that I learned? So some of this sounds very much like a teaching lesson, but that's because teachers know how to lead group discussions. So when you are in a group, if you are looking at number 17, I am going to let you all review that on your own because I feel like I am missing a page here. What is 16? Am I missing that? Yes, I am. Here it is. I was missing a page. I apologize. Okay, so there was the discussion group thing I got tripped up on, but I remembered that. Okay, so the one-on-one time with campers, I'm going to go back to that because there's the questions that I'm suggesting that you ask. You can also come up with your own. Do you have a Bible at home? Do you go to church? What do you think about Jesus, about God? What have you been thinking about the Bible lessons, the missionary story? We will still have that in a closing rally. What does the verse mean to you? All sorts of questions, and you might come up with your own ideas, but that lead you to a deeper understanding of where your campers are in their walk with the Lord. Caleb.
Are you expecting senior counselors only or junior and senior counselors to do it?
I'd like everybody to try. Yeah. And maybe you split it up. Like if you have a junior counselor and a senior counselor who you are both confident that you can have these conversations, maybe if you split them up and say, I did this guy yesterday, you do that, you can also, that might be an easier way to accomplish it actually.
Have a draft.
Yes, exactly. I pick my favorite first. No. Yes.
So all Ruby's boys and girls will be in here at one time?
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so to split up all Ruby 2s will be boys and girls together?
No, it's Ruby 2 is like, you are Ruby 2.
Right.
And that's your cabin, so your girls will be with you in your discussion group.
And there's no Ruby 2 boys?
No. No. So the list of names that I sent the senior counselors yesterday, that's your cabin, yeah, your group. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for asking that. I wouldn't want you to sit there going, who's in my discussion group? Yes, your cabin is your discussion group.
No, I knew that, but Ruby 2 boys are going to be somewhere else, right? Okay, great.
So Ruby's, the girls' cabins are 1 through 6, and the boys' cabins are 7 through 10. Yeah, so, yeah. Okay, so, and those one-on-one questions are going to lead us to what we want to report back to Barb, if anything of significance is there. But I will remind you about that again on Monday morning in the staff meeting. Okay, building relationships with kids. That's where I wanted to go next, which is why I was confused. And some of these also go into tips for leading a group discussion. So when you are building relationships with kids, it's very important that they know that you know who they are. And you can do that in a couple of different ways. One is not as easy as it sounds for me. Maybe it's easier for some of you. I have a relative. It's incredibly easy for him. I have no idea how he does it. Learn their names. I have a hard time with this. I have a hard time learning someone's name right away and remembering it. And so, I coach field hockey, and the first 2 weeks of practice, I'm always like, you over there. I have a hard time with that. So I'm going to ask you. You have 9 to 11, 8 to 11 people. You can learn their names. I'm going to try your hardest to learn their names and use it. Because when you use someone's name, they feel like you know them, and they feel more included and more important. Ask good questions. So when Barb was saying about the open-ended questions, and you're going to get a whole bunch of open-ended answers, that's very important when you're reviewing the verse. But when you are in actual conversation with a person, you want to ask open-ended questions because then you get more out of them. So try to avoid yes or no questions. Like, don't say things like, did you watch the game last night? Yes. That kills the conversation, right? Say, what did you think of that grand slam in the 4th inning? Because you can't say yes or no to that. You have to talk about what you thought about it. So ask open-ended questions, things that can't be answered with a yes or a no. That's a challenge for those of you who haven't really had to think that way before. Listen more than you talk. Sometimes as counselors, we think we need to know all the answers. We need to be in charge, which means we need to be doing all the talking. But when you're forming a relationship with someone, you want to listen to them and take in what they're saying more than you talk to them. So listen more than you talk. This one is the next one. Be encouraging with specific praise. That is actually more important than you think. Again, I'll go back to my coaching field hockey example. But when I'm coaching field hockey and I really want the players to learn something, I'm not going to look at them at the end of practice and go, good job today, guys. I mean, I might say that, but that's not going to actually lend to them learning the skill. But during a drill, I might say, oh, I love the way that you picked your stick up all the way over the ball and pulled to the left that quickly. That's specific feedback, specific praise about something that that girl is doing well. And I hope that she'll try to do it that way every time because she thought, oh, I did that right. That was, she'll learn. In the same way, kids want to know specifically what they're doing that they're doing well. So don't yell at your kids, hey, guys, we had fun at games. We're all done with that now. Let's go. You can say that. But that's not relational building. You could go to an individual kid and say, I saw when you smacked so-and-so in the face with that sponge. That was really funny. Right? That's letting the kid know that you saw them, that you were interested in what they were doing, and that you thought they were funny. Right? So try to make your praise with these kids very specific and individual. You can do group praise. You can talk about what a great job you're doing as a cabin, and that is encouraging. But when you're forming relationships with individual campers, make that praise specific. Have fun. These games and songs at camp can feel silly. And sometimes if we're more concerned about what people think of us as we get older, not as old as me, I don't care, but sometimes as we get older, we get very self-conscious. And I'm not going to stand up and do all those motions for Pharaoh because they're so stupid, right? Like we think that way sometimes. We're tempted to just want to sit there, and that's just for the campers. Let them do that. But when you are trying to build a relationship with kids, you want them to see you having fun with them. Stand up and do the motions. No one cares what you look like. No one's looking at you. They're probably thinking about themselves. So don't worry about that. Worry about having fun with your campers. Stand up, look silly, have a good time, and they're going to stand up and look silly and have a good time with you. If you sit with a bad attitude, like, I don't want to do this, they're going to try to sit with a bad attitude. They're going to look at you and do what you do and model their behavior after yours. Include everyone. And I want to say something about that, including everyone, because this is something that you're going to have to learn. This is a hard thing to do, actually, because everyone wants to be included in different ways. There are children who will talk constantly, try to take over the whole group discussion, try to take over the whole cabin, right? So it's easy to see that they are willing to share and participate. There are going to be some kids in your cabin who would like to participate, but are reserved enough that they're not going to interrupt that other person to say what they're thinking, and they kind of want you to call on them so that they can have an opportunity to participate. And then there's going to be a third type of kid who does not want to be put on the spot, would actually be humiliated if they were called on and they had to talk in front of everyone. You're not going to know that just by looking at a kid. You're going to know who the talker is, and you're going to know who's quiet, but you're not going to know the difference between a child who would be humiliated if you called on them and a child who really wants to be called on. And so I would ask you to tread lightly. So if you don't know if that person is going to be humiliated because you are calling on them or that they want to be called on, then just don't. Ask a general, is there anyone else who would like to share? Like, oh, we've heard a lot from you. I wonder if there's anyone else who wants to share. And then some kids might pipe up. But as the week goes on, I think you're going to learn more and more about your kids, and you're going to be able to better perceive if they're the kind of kid who would be humiliated or the kind of kid who would like to be called on. Does that make sense? That's hard to figure out. That's like a lifelong skill, is trying to learn what people would feel like that, but try, and then tread lightly if you don't know. Let's go on to tips for leading discussion groups. Now, I have provided for you, and we will get to this, many discussion questions for each day. You are not going to get through all of those discussion questions, but they're there for you to give you an idea of where to go in your discussion group. Some of them are meant for younger kids. Some of them are meant for older kids. You have to make your judgment call based on your cabin and who the kids are in your cabin. But generally speaking, always start with an easy question. The easy question might be, who is the main character in that story that was just told? That's an easy question, right? Another easy, like a softball question, and you'll see some of them that I've written in there, might be, I don't know, I'm looking here. No, there's no softballs in that one. Anyway, you can come up with a softball question. You guys are all very smart. So come up with an easy question that everyone would know the answer to, or at least think they know the answer to. Ask open-ended questions. Again, don't use yes or no questions. If you do, maybe give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, like Barb said, if you're trying to get people to start thinking in a certain way. Give kids time to think. There have been several times where people get to feel so awkward when there's silence that they start answering the question themselves instead of just letting there be some silence. Silence is sometimes okay. There's a point where it's not, but that just means nobody knows the answer. But a lot of times they just need to process and think about it a little bit. So don't answer the question for them. Give them a little bit of time to think. I'm just sort of buzzing through these. You can look through them on your own. But, I did want to say this last point there. End with a clear takeaway or focused point. So at the end of your discussion time, before you close in prayer or pray with them, or before you end, I want you to go back to one of the focus points. And I gave them to you for each day. The focus that I was writing from when I was writing the curriculum. So I want you to pick one of those focus points at the end of your discussion group and repeat it to the cabin so that they can remember that one thing that you would like them to take from the lesson. But we can get onto that more, but that's what I meant by that. Okay, I'm watching my time here. We're doing fine. Okay, group management. I'm going to do this, then I'm going to give us a break so we can get some water, use the bathroom, walk around, pick a new seat, but after group management. Okay, with group management, it is best if you set your expectations early. So on Monday, your first day, say however you want your group to be run. Say, we're all going to have a chance to talk. If we're talking too much on top of each other, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand so that I can call on you if that's what you want your group to look like. Or you can say, we're not going to talk on top of one another, and have a symbol for maybe whose turn it is to talk. And if no one is talking, then you can say, if no one's talking, I'm going to start calling on people, and again, use your best judgment for how to do that. If kids get out of control in the group, if there's misbehavior, just redirect calmly. Sometimes even just sitting by one of the kids or asking one of your junior counselors or junior counselor if you know that there's a kid who's kind of antsy. If you can move close to them, a lot of times that solves a lot of problems. It's just sitting next to a child who is getting kind of antsy. Stay calm and consistent. I have on there know when to move on. That is so broad because it can mean with behavior, like know when to move on. If a kid is misbehaving, you don't always have to go into a lecture or what is happening here. Know when to move on and to just drop it and keep going with the group discussion. But that also has to do with context. And this has to do with handling difficult questions. So I'm going to move on to that when I'm talking about handling difficult questions. But know when to move on. That's kind of a judgment call you need to make, but think about that as you're managing your group. Okay. I'm going to do the handling difficult questions when I'm talking about sharing the good news about Jesus and the lesson summaries. But before I do that, I want to give us a 5-minute break to stand up, kind of shake off the I'm just lecturing at you forever feeling, because I know this is not super engaging for you. But, so stand up, shake it off, move around, pick a different seat, go out, get some water. There's a water fountain down there. There's a water fountain downstairs. Feel free to move around, and we'll start again in about 5 minutes. right, let's gather back together. Is everybody awake now? I know, it's late. We'll go through the rest pretty quickly. All right, come on back in and take your seats. All right, the next thing I want to do is talk about handling difficult questions, because that is going to come up. I want to talk about how we're going to talk about the gospel. And then I want to go over... Yeah. That one has been wobbly. I might need to look at that microphone stand. Oh, I said everybody pick a different seat. You're just the only one. You guys didn't, but you're fine. Stay where you are. I just wanted everyone to wake up a little bit. If you're awake, don't worry about it. Okay, then we're going to go over the Bible curriculum and what you can expect from that, and then we'll go home. But the first thing I want to talk about is handling difficult questions. Now, when I'm talking about difficult questions, I'm mostly talking about difficult spiritual questions. There is a time this is just an example of something you might run into from a really smart kid, but there is a time in our Bible curriculum where we talk about Jesus being the king that God sent to rule the world. And in our gospel, when the image that I made for you, it talks about God being a king and being in charge of the world because he created everything. So a really smart kid is going to look at that and say, is God the king or is Jesus the king? That is a Trinity question we don't even need to deal with, right? It is a good question to ask, but the Bible, we know, does call God the king and Jesus the king in different contexts. So that is how you will answer that question. The Bible calls both God and Jesus the king. Move on, right? Now, the kid might have more questions, and you can talk to them individually about that, but that's an example of know when to move on. When it's a question that a really smart kid asks about something theological that just is like not where we are right now, right? Then you can feel free to move on. You can affirm them for asking good questions. You can also say, I don't know. Sometimes it's very hard for us to look at a kid who has asked a good question, and we're supposed to be in charge of this group, right? We're supposed to be the adults or the big kids who know everything. That's very tempting, right? You don't have to know everything. And actually, the Bible tells us that we aren't going to know everything, and we aren't going to understand everything about our faith. So it is very healthy for you to be able to say to a kid who asks you a question, I really don't know. You can go back to the Bible and look it up with them, or you can say, I'm going to think about that tonight and get back to you tomorrow. Or why don't we both go home and you ask your parents and I'm going to look it up and then we'll come back tomorrow and talk about it again. But it's okay to say, I don't know. So please don't feel like you have to be the expert on everything that every kid asks. So I'm just giving you the freedom to say, I don't know. Now let's go to number 20, and you'll see number 20 in your book also has a page behind it that is very colorful. Frida, can I borrow yours? You may. Thank you. So this is the page that I'm talking about. When we talk about the good news with kids, if a kid wants to talk to you about that in one of your one-on-one conversations, I put this in here sort of as a cheat sheet for you that you can show the child to sort of walk them through what they're asking about when they're asking about making a choice to follow Jesus. Now, I have a bit of a soapbox. And I'm going to get on it. We have often talked about saying a prayer or asking Jesus into our hearts in the form of a checkbox that needs to be checked off and it's done and we move on. I don't think that's really what our faith or what the gospel teaches us. I don't think it's a checkbox that we mark and we move on with our lives. I think that when we make our first decision to follow Jesus, what we're doing is saying to Jesus, I want to have a friendship with you. And that is a friendship that is going to go on and on and on and on. And we're going to repeat those prayers of repentance and calling Jesus Lord over and over again throughout our lives. So looking at it as a checkbox isn't a healthy way to look at salvation. Looking at it as the start of a relationship with God is the way that I want us to look at it. So I have created this image and I've given you some pointers that you can use as a way to talk about salvation with kids. So in the middle is that big yellow circle that says, God is, I'm trying to remember how I said it because I said it different on the sheet. God is the King who loved us. And that goes along with the scripture lesson that I'm teaching, is that God is the King who loves us. So I want you to be able to explain that God is the King, and you can use verses like John 3:16 or 1 John 4:9 through 10 that can be useful, that talk about how much God loves the children, how much God loves us, and that he is the King who is in charge. Thank you for that. I didn't bring that up here, unfortunately. Okay, so after we talk with the kids about how God is the King who loves us, we're going to go up to that box that talked about we sinned. We're going to talk about sin as something that means that we can't be friends with God. And it means that we can't live with him forever and that we are lost. So that goes into the sheep. We are lost. And we are going to talk about being lost a lot during the Bible curriculum. So that's more related to our curriculum, so the kids can relate to that. We're lost. Describe sin as choosing our own way instead of God's way. Things like lying, hurting others, disobeying, these are all things that kids can understand that are choices that move us away from God and away from what he's asking us to do. And emphasize that everyone does things that are wrong. Everyone makes bad choices, not just bad people. Everybody makes bad choices. But then with the cross, it says God provides. God provided a way for us to be in a relationship with him. Oh, and some of this is written in the back, on the back of that illustration, which is more based on these pictures, more so than the tips for sharing the gospel. So then we talk about, when are we lost? You ask the kids, how does the Bible tells us God thinks of us when our sin is in the way? So when our sin is between us and God, what does God think of us? And explain that we're lost and God is looking for us. Sometimes, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's an illustration that I was shown when I was a kid that terrified me. Because it was when I was younger, salvation was very fear-based. You don't want to go to hell, you check this box, right? I think that's sometimes when we talk about it. And one of the ways that people use to illustrate God's provision is to say, I'm over here on a cliff, and God is over here on the other cliff, and we can't be together because of our sin. And then sometimes people would even draw a cross connecting the two cliffs, saying, but God made this way so that we could be with him. That's not actually theologically accurate. We can. God does come towards us. God is with us, even when we sin. We can't have a relationship with him if we're disobeying him, but he is near us. Jesus came to earth with all of us sinners. He could be on earth with us, even though we were sinners, right? So God is close to us. Even if you don't believe that God is with you, he is still there. He has not abandoned you. He has not left you. He is with you. But you cannot have a relationship with him if you don't trust in the way that he is taking care of the problem of your sin. And the way he took care of your sin was when Jesus came and provided a way that we can be found and we can be friends with him. That's how I would talk about it with a kid. God provided the way that we could be friends with him. Our sin is in the way of our friendship with God, but Jesus took the punishment for us, the punishment that we deserve. God says somebody needs to be punished for this so that we can be friends because your sin is in the way. But Jesus said, I'll do it. I'll take the punishment. And so Jesus gives us that gift. He gives us the gift of taking our sin, taking our bad choices, taking our disobedience, and giving us his righteousness, giving us all of his good choices, giving us all of his perfect life, so that God sees us as if we lived the perfect life that Jesus lived. That's how we're going to talk to the kids about the gospel. We're not going to scare them by saying, you can't ever be with God, because that's not true. God is here. He is with us. And I am praying that his spirit fills our sanctuary when we are teaching Bible, because I know that God will be with us, even if there are kids in this sanctuary that don't believe in him. But then we do have to respond. And that's that last square where we're raising our hands, and we do respond to that gift. Everyone has a choice they have to make. Will you trust Jesus and trust the gift that he's giving you? You can turn from yourself and from your sin and turn to Jesus. And that is the beginning of a lifelong relationship where you are continually choosing to follow Jesus and to say, I've done wrong things, forgive me, Lord. And that whole relationship keeps going. It doesn't stop with a checkbox. Anyway, so that is a little bit of a controversial way sometimes, I think, to look at how we are presenting salvation to kids. But I think that we can all look back on our lives, at least I know I can, and honestly, I've sat through quite a few meetings with people where they're having to tell me their stories, their faith stories. And there is always a time, they can say, where they first knew who Jesus was and said, Jesus, I am going to follow you. But they might not have understood what that really meant. And then there's a time later in their life where they know, oh, I can understand that and say it again in a much more mature way now, because I more deeply understand who Jesus is and who God is, and can choose to follow him. So people all go through these stages of spiritual growth. That first decision is incredibly important. And if anyone at camp makes that decision with you, or you know about it, that's something that we want to know, because that first decision is very important. But it's also important that we stay in relationship with God for our whole lives. And that's how we want to present that to our kids. All right, I'm going to leave the gospel pages. If you have any questions about that, I'm happy to be on a soapbox. I lecture people about this all the time, even when they don't want to hear about it. So just ask me. I'll give you more than you want to know. But again, I based this curriculum, if you want to turn to number 21, the daily Bible lesson summary, on Jesus Strong and Kind. And you'll hear the song over and over again. We're going to sing it with the kids. I'm going to have it played through the speakers as everyone's coming into Bible before we do the memory verse review, so that they're hearing it. And then I have slides that I think are going to make it obvious, and images for each day. So day 1 is Monday. And in the lyrics, Jesus Strong and Kind, it says, I'm going to summarize, but when I'm thirsty, Jesus will give me water. And it's talking about living water. So our memory verse is going to be, whoever believes in me shall never thirst. And we're going to use the story of the woman at the well. Some of you might recognize that as the Samaritan woman. So we're going to tell the story of when Jesus met with the woman at the well. We're going to have an image for every day. So the first day's image is actually going to be a well that we'll have up on stage. We'll bring it out during the Bible lesson, but then it's going to stay in the sanctuary. Wednesday's a huge boat. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to put that in the sanctuary, but it'll be somewhere. So, but the well will fit up on the stage, and it will stay out all week so that kids will always have that image in their head of the well and thirst from day 1. If you look at that first page, day 1 thirst, the focus points are there, and some of these are going to be repetitive from day to day. But when I was writing this or working through this story, often guided with Sinclair's thoughts as well, but Jesus knows everything about us. He loves us anyway, and he can give us what we really need inside. So we're going to talk about how the woman was thirsty. She was thirsty for the water that she was getting from the well, but really her heart was thirsty, and Jesus had water that would quench her thirsty heart. So we're going to talk about that in the lesson. Jesus is a life giver. This is going to be on several days. His life giving is for anyone and everyone. So life in this looks like the living water that Jesus gives. And then Jesus can give you what your heart is really thirsty for. Living water that will give your heart life forever. And then the discussion questions that are below there are suggested for you. But again, use your discretion on those. And if there's other ones that you think might fit your cabin better, go ahead. So day 2, the stanza in the song talks about, when I am weak, Jesus is my strength. So the stories, or the memory verses, come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And that's the one that Barb was referring to when she was giving examples. But the story from that day is the story of Jairus' daughter, or Jairus, and his daughter who was sick. And she did actually die in the story, and Jesus brought her back to life, and the woman who is healed. I don't know if you remember the story about Jesus healing a woman who just reached out and touched his clothes. But those two stories are linked in the Bible. Number one, because they're told together and they happened on the same day, but also because the little girl was 12 years old and the woman had been sick for 12 years. When the Bible does things like that, it's telling us these things are supposed to be linked. So that's how we're going to be talking about them when we talk in the lesson. The image is going to be a cot. We're creating a cot out of a bench that Jairus' daughter is going to be on, and then that'll stay up on the stage for the rest of the week as the imagery for when she was weak and Jesus brought her back to life. So the focus points for this lesson are, obviously the last one there says Jesus is a life giver. His life giving is for anyone and for everyone. Also, up to the beginning, Jesus has power over sickness and even death. He is our strength when we trust him. And then this is a point that I'd like us to make clearly with our kids. I'm going to try to make it clearly in the lesson, and hopefully you guys can repeat it. But Jesus cares about helping everyone, the powerful and the outcast. So Jairus was someone who was a very powerful leader in the synagogue. He had a lot of money. He was well respected. Everyone knew who he was. And so he was the powerful person who Jesus was helping. And the woman was an outcast because she had been sick for so many years. The laws of her society said that she couldn't worship in the synagogue. She couldn't be friends with people. She had nobody. She had nothing for 12 years. So she was the outcast, and Jairus was the powerful man. And Jesus, in his great grace, helped them both. So that is a big focus for that story too. Day 3 is fear. And the song says, when I am afraid, Jesus is my shield. The memory verse is, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you, and I call that my 10-finger verse. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. And so the image, if you'll notice, is 10 fingers. So you can teach your kids that. That's been helpful when I have taught this verse to my kids. And the story is going to be when Jesus calmed the storm. So it's when all the disciples are in the boat and Jesus falls asleep, and the disciples are like, wait a second. And so it's going to be about asking questions, because the disciples were asking questions of Jesus, and one of them was incredibly outlandish, asking Jesus if they even cared about them. So we're going to focus on those questions, but Jesus' ability to control that storm. And this is where we say Jesus is the king that God promised to send. He is powerful over everything, and we can trust him when we're afraid. When life feels scary, Jesus is with us and can bring us peace. And then again, Jesus is a life giver. His life giving is for anyone and everyone. And that is the day that we're going to have an enormous boat up on the stage. Thank you to Mrs. Ransom for finding that boat for us. It's going to be great. Day 4, lost. And we're going to break these. So there's 3 parables that I want to talk about in being lost, and then on day 5, found. So day 4 and day 5 are very closely connected. But day 4 is all about being lost. So we're going to start out talking about the 2 parables of the missing things, the lost sheep and the missing coin. So the lost sheep was, the shepherd had 100 sheep, and he was counting them, realized he had lost one, went out to find the lost sheep, and then celebrated when he found that lost sheep. The missing coin is the story of the woman who lost her coin that was very valuable to her, and she found it. And when she found it, she invited all of her neighbors to come and celebrate with her because she had found her missing coin. Those two parables start when the tax collectors are hanging out around Jesus. So we're going to talk about tax collectors and how they were viewed as sinners. And we're going to talk about how the Pharisees were the people who were saying, those are sinners. Why are they around Jesus? Why does Jesus want to have anything to do with them? And Jesus' response to the Pharisees were to tell these three parables. The first two we're going to talk about on Thursday, because everything was lost, just like a sinner is lost, but that there's joy when the sinner repents. So the focus points there are, you are precious to God, just like that coin was precious to the woman and the sheep was precious to the shepherd. And then there is great joy when those items are found and when a sinner repents. And then also this is where we're going to introduce the idea that Jesus has died to take the punishment that we deserve. So day 5 is going to be found. That's not a word that's in the song, but it's the second half of this lost lesson. And it's going to be the story of the lost sons. We call it the prodigal son, if you remember that story, but I'm going to call it the story of the two lost sons, because I want to talk about the younger son who was lost because he was horrible to his father, said, basically, I wish you were dead, give me all of your money, and he ran off and spent it all and then didn't know what to do because he was feeding pigs, and the pigs were taking better care of him, or were taking better care than he was. So he went back to his father to apologize and say, I'm sorry. But the second son is the one who was out in the field who didn't understand why the father was celebrating when the son came back. And we don't actually know what happened to that son. We don't know if he came and celebrated or if he didn't. And that's sort of the mystery of the Pharisees. Are they found or are they not? We don't really know about them either. But our image is going to be the cross. It'll have been up there all week, but we're going to use that as our image on the final day. I am going to wrap this up because I think that it is time for us to get going. But on that last day, I really want you to focus on the joy that comes when lost things are found. We are the lost things when God finds us because he's looking for us. And we turn and we say, oh, you found me. I know who you are. I trust you. I believe in you. A big party happens because we are found. All right. I will see all of you. Do you know what time you're coming on Monday morning? 8:50? 7:50. I thought I heard that wrong. Okay. 7:50. So that we are all in our seats by 8 o'clock. I will see you then in your orange shirts. Thank you for coming tonight and for staying so long.